People think that finances are just numbers. There's so much about finances that's actually just psychology and emotions. Not like you could crunch all the numbers and create the most beautiful financial plan, most beautiful projections for what your income's going to be, all of those things. It doesn't matter. It's pretty much useless unless you've got the right mindset for finances. So that's one of the first things that I see with a lot of folks is starting to actually create that abundance mindset of there's always going to be more coming in, as opposed to that scarcity mindset of there's never going to be enough. I have to take every last dollar that's here.
Welcome to the Fitness Empire Podcast, where we show gym owners how to dominate their competition and build a massively profitable fitness business. Dustin and Matt collectively own 12 gyms and have a combined 30 years of experience in the fitness industry. They're here to help gym owners create an empire of impact and income.
Hey, Empire Builders, welcome in for another episode of the Fitness Empire Podcast. We got a special treat for you guys, a special guest speaker, because we want to help you in an area that probably not a lot of other podcasts are talking about, and that's around financial planning, right? What you got to be doing with your money, how to protect yourself, where you should be putting it, how you should be thinking about it, taxes, savings, planning, all those good things. We're going to cover it all. And so I am joined by my special guest, Colin Pomer. Did I say your last name correctly, Colin?
Pomer, but close enough.
Pomer, I'll take it. Well, I get Bogle, so I don't know how that feels with that O. It's sometimes a hard stretch for people. So before we get into giving them some nuggets, kind of give us a little bit of your background. How did you get into this world and where are you at today?
Sure. So a couple of worlds that I'm in. I own a CrossFit gym here in Waterbury, Vermont. Got into that kind of by accident, actually, where going to a gym, my partner at the time was working at it, and I was like, oh, it would be cool one day to own a gym. Started doing some like back of the napkin math, like I think a lot of us have done. And I was like, oh, it could be super, super profitable. And then like a month later, she came home and she was like, guess what? They're selling the gym. And I hadn't intentionally done it, but I put myself in the place where I could jump on it and take advantage of something happening quick like that. So I've owned that for going on 5 years now. And I also own a financial planning practice here in Vermont. And my financial planning practice, I work mostly with business owners in that health and wellness space. So gym owners, PT owners, some of those types of folks. And I started that just about 4 years ago as well, just a little bit after I got into owning a gym. But I'd been a CPA for 10-ish years before that. So I'd been in the financial services world doing the CPA work, found out that I actually like talking to people more than I like looking at spreadsheets. So made that switch over there, and I am incredibly, incredibly thankful that I have.
Love it. All right, man. Well, again, to our gym owner audience, know that's why we're so excited to have Colin on here. He's one of us. He's in our tribe. He's a gym owner. So if he can speak to, financial planning around it, who better, right? So let's get into the good stuff. Colin, my question I wanted to kind of kick things off with is, what is a big mistake that gym owners make around finances? Like, you probably have seen things repeating over and over again, and you've caught onto a pattern. Share with us, what is that matrix that you have kind of got an eye for that maybe other gym owners are missing?
Yeah, so one of the first basic things that I see is that a lot of gym owners won't separate out their business and their personal finances. So they might not have, they'll probably have an LLC set up, but they might not have a business checking account, a business credit card set up, or they'll pay for stuff out of that business that actually is personal expenses that you really can't make a good argument for why it's a business expense. So that's one of those first easy things that I see from folks is
what are a few examples of that? Like, what are things that people are writing off that you're like, hey, you don't have any business writing this off as a gym owner. This is not going to fly.
Your car, for example. So I will start this out, by the way, with any financial advice. It's not specific to any one person. It's all general advice. Anything that I say on here, certainly go and take it to a financial advisor and go have that personal conversation with a financial advisor. So compliance team absolutely wants me to say that. Second thing is I'm not a practicing CPA. So any of the tax things that I talk about, I'm not doing that on a day-to-day. I'm looking bigger picture for tax strategy for folks. But one of those quick and easy things that I see from folks is like they'll put their car and have the business pay for it. If you're a gym owner, chances are there's no reasonable business excuse, or there's no business reason that you need to have a car. You just need to commute to and from places. So you really can't write off your car, for example.
Interesting. Okay. All right. That's a good, yeah, I bet there are a lot of gym owners doing that and not knowing. Now, some of them wrap it. Is that going to, change things? Like if they wrap it in their logo and it's like, hey, this is marketing now. Like, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I literally had this conversation like an hour ago. You can write off getting the car wrapped, but not the car payment itself. You can write off the miles that you're traveling to visit. Like if you've got personal training clients that you go see at their house, or you need to go from one gym location to another gym location, absolutely write off those miles and write off getting the car wrapped if you want to do that. But you can't write off the car payment specifically.
Got it. All right. So it sounds like just going to and from work, can't be writing that off. But like once you arrive at work, driving that the business is requiring you to do, it kind of changes things, right? Like you're going to different locations, you're going to personal training, you're doing that type of stuff. All right. Well, that's good to know. Now, in today's world, everyone's all into like tech and software and things like that. What are some go-to softwares or technology that you feel like can help gym owners help better get a grasp on their finances? Like, should they do the good old, manually putting it into a spreadsheet? Should they be printing out bank statements? Is there a software you stand by? But like, how can they just start to see their finances a little bit more repetition?
I personally hate paper, so I wouldn't suggest printing stuff out. I know some people love paper and you want to write on it, go for it. I personally hate it, so everything is technology for me. First thing, again, kind of like the base level is get a bookkeeping software. QuickBooks is the one that I use that I think is super, super easy to use. QuickBooks Online, it's like $50 a month, not too expensive. And you'll be able to see everything that goes in. One of the first things that I tell gym owners is you want to make sure that you at least can have done the bookkeeping for like 6+ months so that you know what the heck is going on. You don't have to be the expert there, but have an idea of what's going on so that when you do outsource that, because that is one of the first things you should outsource, just go hire a bookkeeper. It's like $65, $75 an hour, probably takes them like 3 to 4 hours a month. It's well worth your time. Go outsource that bookkeeping. And then when they come back to you with questions, if you've done it for 6 months, you at least have an idea of what the questions they're asking are, and you're not totally lost on that piece. So that's the first piece. Some kind of bookkeeping software, and QuickBooks is my personal go-to. Of course, you've got your CRM, your client relationship manager there, and inside of that software, you probably have some financial projections, meaning it'll tell you what kind of income you expect coming up. So these memberships are renewing on these dates, and here's how much you should be expecting to see come into your bank account. That's a really, really helpful thing to know, as well as you're starting to look forward to like, can I buy this piece of equipment? Can we pay off this loan? You need to know what money is coming in to make those educated decisions there. So that would be another one. Certainly leverage that piece.
So if we were thinking about systemizing this for a gym owner, and we're looking at kind of perfect world, but kind of doable in the sense of like, it's not super overwhelming. Kind of, if you were to lay out a ideal systemized approach between bookkeeping, staying on top of your financials, CPA, and financial advisor, and now eventually get to the financial advisor, like what systemized approach would you kind of look like? Like, hey, every week you should be doing X, every month you should be doing X, every quarter, every year, kind of like what does that look like? Because obviously we want to, some people it's a hot mess, some people are pretty dialed in, but if you're kind of looking at, this would be kind of like the minimum but effective strategy that gym owners should be trying to work towards to optimize their financial world, what would that kind of look like?
So there's no perfect that's going to work for everyone, but I do like your idea, Matt, of minimum viable solution. First thing is track your expenses. So if you go buy something and you've got a receipt, like QuickBooks, for example, you can use an app on your phone. Just take a quick picture of that receipt. It goes right into there. You don't have to think about it anymore. You could do that daily. Every time you make a purchase, you could do that weekly. If you're the type of person who just wants to save a month, spend an hour once a week doing that, half an hour, whatever it is. You could try to do it monthly. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that, because then you might be like, I don't remember what this purchase was because it was a month ago. That's the first one. Certainly do that piece. For some folks quarterly, but more folks monthly, look at your financial statements. So you should get those, let's say by like the second week of the month. Just take a look at it. How much revenue came in? How much did you spend? Did you expect? Was the money that you spent different than what you expected it to be? And then from there, a lot of smaller gym owners can make a pretty good decision about how to pay themselves or how much to pay themselves, where it's usually just, hey, whatever's left, I'm going to pay myself from this. Ideally, though, one system that I would put in place is pay yourself just like you have a salary. Certainly one thing you can think about doing is getting an S Corp, and that's where you actually have to pay yourself a salary. But even if you just have an LLC, you're not an S Corp, you're filing a Schedule C on your taxes, I would highly, highly recommend, whether it's once a month, twice a month, every 2 weeks, whatever it is, pay yourself like you're an employee. Take X amount every 2 weeks and just pay yourself so you can pay your personal expenses, especially if you have a family. I've got a couple of kids myself, so it's really, really hard on your family if you don't pay yourself consistently, every 2 weeks, every month. Then as the business goes through its ups and downs, your family has to feel that. And that's really tough. If you can give them I don't want to say illusion, but kind of like the feeling that it's consistent, they probably won't resent the business in quite the same way.
I also think paying yourself is important because sometimes gyms have a false illusion of the profitability of their business because they're not paying themselves, right? So it's like, well, you're not paying yourself, so really, is it even, technically profitable at that standpoint? Probably not, right? But to the psychology of it too is, hey, if your bills are paid and you are working in the business, like if you had to replace yourself, you would have to pay somebody to do that job, right? So in reality, you should be paying yourself. It just gives people like this false illusion of that. And then the more I've kind of read more financial books too, a lot of people are just big believers in paying yourself, like you said, that living wage, and then being able to pull profits, either quarterly or at the end of the year. And we can get into that, but that provides stability. And most human beings function a lot better with some stability in their life. And you're not going to feel stable if you don't know what your minimum bringing home every single month.
Yeah, I completely agree. And finances, people think that finances are just numbers. There's so much about finances that's actually just psychology and emotions. Like you could crunch all the numbers and create the most beautiful financial plan, most beautiful like projections for what your income's going to be, all of those things. It doesn't matter. It's pretty much useless unless you've got the right mindset for finances. And so that's one of those, frankly, that's one of the first things that I see with a lot of folks is starting to actually create that abundance mindset of there's always going to be more coming in, as opposed to that scarcity mindset of there's never going to be enough. I have to take every last dollar that's here.
All right. So far we got track your expenses, look at your monthly financial statements. You should have them by the middle of the month, pay yourself a salary, right? The next steps, obviously, okay, that's kind of the basics, right? What would be the next of integrating a CPA or a financial advisor, and then kind of looking again at that as a monthly, quarterly, yearly type of plan?
Yep. So bookkeeper first, that's a monthly thing. That's pretty much always the first thing I tell my clients to get is get a bookkeeper. CPA is oftentimes second, where you want to make sure you have someone filing your taxes for you because you probably don't want to spend the time doing that. And if you're wrong, which it's far too easy to be wrong, it's really nice to have someone else to rely on for that piece. Third one is financial planner. And this is someone who isn't going to be looking in the past. Bookkeepers and CPAs, I love them dearly. They look in the past. They're seeing what have you done so far? Financial planner is going to help you look a little bit more in the future. Where do you want to be? What do you want? What's the purpose of this business? What's the purpose of finances for you? I find that too many people put money on a pedestal and they're like, oh, I want to make money. I'm here to make money. And they're like worshiping money, essentially. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. Those folks are oftentimes the folks who are stuck on that treadmill of never having enough. I think if we kick that pedestal out, money's really just a tool. We can use that tool however we want to. Let's make that money work for you to get what matters most to you. If that's time freedom, awesome. If that's financial freedom, awesome. How can we do that?
So how often should you be meeting with your CPA in your opinion?
So your CPA, if you're not meeting with them at least annually, that's a problem. Probably a couple times in the beginning of the year. I think a really, really good CPA is actually going to help you plan out your tax strategy going forward. So you should probably be meeting with your CPA, let's call it like 2 to 3 times in the beginning of the year during tax season, and then 1 to 2 times later on during the year.
And then what is typically the integration of the financial planner and the CPA? Because I've kind of been in that world where you get egos involved and everyone thinks they're the smartest person in the room, and the tax strategist says to do X and the CPA says you can't do that. So what does that kind of look like in your worlds? Which like kind of like the perfect relation. I'm going to assume, having, a CPA that normally works with that tax strategist or financial planner, and they're on the same page versus, hey, I brought in this third party person that you don't know, and now there's conflict or lack of communication. Because I had that last year where I had 2 different people and just like you all supposed to be saving me money, but like you all making my life suck. Like this is terrible. You guys are getting paid and I'm miserable. So like and it's not doing what you guys said it was going to do. So like where do you kind of sit in that world of, you got a bookkeeper, like you got a separate bookkeeper, you might have a separate CPA, you might have a different financial planner or financial strategist. How do you prefer to navigate that world?
So I think that within any type of profession, you're going to have good professionals and you're going to have less good professionals. I think the ones who are maybe a little bit less good are going to have that ego around like, I'm the smartest person in the room. You need to listen to me. This other person is not helpful. I think the best way that I've seen CPA, bookkeeper, attorney, property and casualty person, financial planning, all of that fit within one is to have someone kind of sit in the center with the gym owner and act as the quarterback of the financial picture. I usually do that for my clients. And so what it means is that I'll sit in the center. They don't have to think too much about what's going on. I'll have a pretty good idea of here are the next steps that we want to take. How do each of these professions essentially sits in a silo, and they do a really, really good job inside of that silo, but they don't necessarily see the whole picture. And so they don't see how the decisions they're making might affect another part of a gym owner's financial picture. And that's where having that quarterback can be really, really helpful. And I think the best financial planners are acting as that quarterback for their clients, where maybe like, I'll pick on CPAs. I am a CPA. I love them. The CPAs are great. They can also be super nerdy and don't necessarily know how to talk to gym owners in a language that gym owners can understand. And so having someone there to like, I call it translating what the heck the CPA said, can be super, super helpful. But CPAs are also incentivized, and I think incentives make a really big difference in everyone's lives. CPAs are incentivized to get you the lowest tax this year and next year. I've seen that not turn out so well in the longer term. So someone might try to save $100, $500, $1,000 this year, and then down the line it costs them $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and that's a problem. So that's where, again, the silo can be a little bit hurtful, and making sure that you've got that quarterback in the center that can say, hey, this is going to help a little bit today, but down the line it could provide a really, really big problem. So that's where a financial planner, I think, sits really, really well. A good financial planner sits really, really well. Is they're not just talking about investments. They're not just talking about insurance. They're talking about everything that hits a person's gym owner's financial picture, frankly.
Got it. Well, Colin, I was going to switch gears into insurance and employee benefits. And so I know you said that there's something a gym owner can do regarding insurance that can save them a considerable amount of money. So kind of chime in on that. And what is your stance on insurance?
So there are a few different types of insurance. I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast has heard from a million different people about a million different types of insurances. The few that I've seen make the biggest difference in gym owners' lives are the income protection insurance, the what happens if you get hurt and can't work, disability insurance, if you will. Another one is property and casualty insurance. So your homeowners, your auto, your business liability, those types of insurances. And then employee benefits, so offering health insurance, for example. Those are the kind of three big ones that I think are the biggest levers to pull on. Looking at property and casualty, so your business overhead, your business liability insurance. Most gym owners don't have to use that very often. So it's something that we're paying for that hopefully we never actually have to use. Or maybe it's like once every 20 years, we have to use it to file a claim. What a lot of folks will do is they'll have a really low deductible, meaning if they do file a claim, the insurance company requires the gym owner to pay the first $500, $1,000, whatever it is. That's the deductible piece. And then after that, the insurance kicks in. The lower that deductible, the more that we're paying every month or every year for the insurance company to take on that risk. Oftentimes, we can actually increase that deductible. This is one of those ways where we can find some money that is sitting inside the financial picture. If we increase that deductible, and this ties into making sure you've got enough cash sitting in the business, which is a really, really important piece. If you've got enough cash there to cover, let's say, $2,000, which shouldn't be a hard thing to cover. You should have enough cash to cover ideally 6 months of expenses in the business or access to cash. Then $2,000, you might bring down your the amount that you're paying every month or every year by 10, 15, 20%. All because you took an extra $1,000 of risk on something that likely isn't going to happen.
And that's meaningful because it's putting money in a gym owner's pocket and they just got to call their insurance, one phone call, call their insurance, make this adjustment. That's more money in their pocket, right? Cash in hand. Now, how about with benefits? I know you said, that's another thing on the list. There's a lot of owners that do 1099. I'm very hard leaning W-2. I think Matt is pretty much the same. And so there's a lot of owners that'll justify 1099ing their coaches, and they'll say, well, we're a CrossFit, so they'll just come in and coach Monday night only. Or, they're a full-time X, so they're coming in Saturdays only. It's not worth the headache of onboarding them and putting them into the W-2 system. I'll just 1099 them. But where's the risk for the gym owner? And, how does that play into things like insurance? If they do, employee benefit, do they want to offer that to their team?
Certainly a part of it is employee benefits, but more of it actually is the risk that you're taking. So I am a heavy advocate of W-2. Like I've got coaches in my CrossFit gym who coach, 4 hours a month, and they're W-2 employees. The reason is that I have control over when they work, where they work, and what they do. And in the eyes of the IRS and the state tax departments, that makes them an employee. It's not, there's a little bit of gray area, but there's actually not a lot of gray area there, where if you actually try, and a ton of gym owners do this, try and make employees, and I'm using that term intentionally, 1099 contractors, to save 7.5%. And that's all you're saving, is 7.5% on the taxes.
And so you said when they work. I was just going to have you recap that again. When they work, or were the other two?
So it's when they work. It's really the control. There are a couple of things that the IRS looks at. If you as an employer, as a business owner, have control over when they work, where they work, how they do their job, they're an employee.
And since all fitness gyms have classes at a defined time at a defined facility, how could anybody, I guess, make their employees 1099?
There could be and this is where there is a little bit of gray area. If you have like a personal trainer, for example, and you say, I don't care what time you work, I don't care what you do. I don't care how you treat your clients, and I'm going to pay you like a set amount, a negotiated amount to do your job. Arguably, you could, and this is where I would say go have a conversation with a CPA or a tax attorney, but you could potentially make an argument that those folks are 1099. But pretty much every personal trainer in a gym is still like, they're being told when to work, they're being told what they're doing, and they're being told how they're being paid. If you think about like an actual consultant, if you hire a business consultant, for example, you don't tell them when to work. You don't tell them what they're doing. You say, hey, here's the outcome I want. I'll pay you this negotiated amount. Go do it whenever you want. That's really what a 1099 is. That's not what we're doing with our coaches. That's not what we're doing with our personal trainers. We're really treating them like employees. And so the IRS is going to say we need to actually treat them like employees.
For the most part, the only people that fall under that is like they're getting access to your facility, and that's about it, right? So like either they're paying you for the space, or you're taking a split of their revenue, but you have zero control of what they do and how they do it, which most gyms do not fall under that category. And it's like, what's the risk, right? So let's just say someone's like, I don't think it's a big deal. I only got a couple people, but ultimately what's the risk, and what are they facing to try to save 7.5% on very little amount of money?
Back taxes. The headache of an audit, frankly, it's not a money thing, but it's just a real headache to be audited, and fines and penalties from either the IRS and or your state Department of Taxes.
Because isn't that one of the bigger red flags for audits? So like if you don't want an audit, there's certain things that are like, most people in the CPA world or financial world are like, well, if you don't want an audit, these are like the top 10 things that tend to trigger an audit. Is that one of them? I thought somebody said that was in the past.
Yeah, again, I'm not a practicing CPA. I know that showing a loss on your tax statements is one of those red flags that the IRS is going to take a look at. I'm not sure about some of the other ones. That's the big one that sticks out in my head.
Well, Colin, I got a selfish question around this. So we have a marketing agency, and I don't know, I get confused by this, but at the end of the year, owners will say, hey, can you fill out this form? You're a contractor, fill out 1099. And I'm like, we're a service provider. I don't 1099 my pest control guy. I don't 1099 my pool cleaner. Why are they asking us to kind of act as if, so is that wrong, or is that the right thing to do? I guess I'm just wondering, does it really matter? Could they go either way?
Again, not a practicing CPA. This is really getting into the weeds of some of the taxes that you should go have that conversation with your CPA. My guess is that they are getting that request from their CPA.
Probably. Yeah. It is a small percentage.
They are. I've gotten a few for coaching where I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah. I got to go do what?
It's over $600. Matt, did you have any other questions on that?
No, but I have one that I think will serve our audience pretty well. So we were to take a gym owner journey from, let's just say let's just pretend they're starting with paying themselves a salary, right? That they own a business, to kind of the journey of now I'm making profit. And they came to you, like, where are we starting? What are we doing? Like, what are the basic things that we want to put in place? And then as we go and get more profitable, kind of like where are the levers and things that, people should be thinking about of maximizing that they have a business and being able to put more money in the savings or more money into retirement, just for this simple fact that they own a business, that maybe they have some stuff they can do that the average human can't. But obviously, more than likely, they're starting with, these are the basics that are good for everybody, but then there's more advanced stuff that we can be doing. So let's take the journey from, all right, I'm paying myself a salary, I have a living wage, now I have a business, or I have distributions. Where are we starting? And then let's kind of bring them down the path of what a journey could be, and like kind of like what's the dream outcome that we want, which obviously I think for most would be, I make enough money that I can put money away that one day I can retire and not have to be stressed about money the rest of my life.
So I think the first thing you need to do is define what success looks like to you, because for every gym owner, it's going to look different. For every business owner, it's going to look different. And as a business owner, the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, are we getting into business to create wealth for the business, or are we getting in business to create wealth for ourselves? I ask that because most people make decisions that end up creating wealth for the business, but not necessarily for themselves. And so Steve Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of them is start with the end in mind. You start with the end in mind there. Are we doing that because we want to create wealth for ourselves or for the business?
I was just going to say, can you define the difference between the two of what is creating wealth for the business versus themselves? Because I would think 99% of the gym owners want this translate to making wealth for themselves, not for their business, because they're not building this big enterprise that they're going to have this big freaking massive exit, right? Like the most I've ever sold a gym for is $1 million, but like that itself isn't going to make me my financial goals long term, right? So I would think that the average gym owner, like most of their gyms are never going to sell for more than $200,000 to $500,000 at one clip, versus like some people that are building wealth for a business do it in the intent that one day their retirement plan is, I'm going to make 100 million, 150 million off of my business, and creating this enterprise value that you just can't create in a single gym.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to do with a single location. But even in that case, Matt, when you say like that someone they're getting into it so they can sell it for $1 million later on down the line, the ultimate goal is to sell it and create wealth for yourself down the line, right? So I've yet to meet a person who has said, oh yeah, I just want to create wealth for the business. I don't really care about creating wealth for myself. But it really is just a way to frame the thoughts for yourself as a business owner around, why am I actually doing this? So that's the first question. And I'm a huge proponent of asking questions, because even if you just sit there and ask these questions to yourself and you're honest with yourself, you'll have a lot more clarity about where you want to go and where you're trying to go, as opposed to if you just kind of like stay on the hamster wheel, is how I think of it. So the first question is that. From there, some really, really basic stuff. Let's make sure, and I picture it like you're trying to build a financial home, right? On the personal side. And as crazy as it might sound, I said earlier that we want to keep these two separate, like the business and the personal separate. But from a financial planning perspective, I actually think of them as the same. And this might sound a little bit crazy. Reason being, your biggest asset is probably your business. You're probably drawing either all of your income, half of your income if your spouse also works as a W-2 job. That's a really great combination, by the way. From a financial planning perspective, you're probably drawing a substantial portion of your income from the business. And so that's probably your biggest asset, and probably will be for maybe not the rest of your life, but at least as long as you have the business. We need to treat that as your biggest asset. So when we talk about financial planning, it really needs to be thinking of both the business and the personal together and how they intertwine and how they affect each other. That being said, let's work on the business first, is generally what we try to do. But you're trying to create this financial home. So if you picture a home, I picture like a two-dimensional home that I'm drawing on a piece of paper. If I asked you to draw a home, you're probably going to draw like the 4 walls, a door, a couple of windows, and a roof, right? Most people don't think about that foundation underneath. But if we don't have a solid foundation, I don't care how pretty that house is. Big bad wolf is going to come by and blow that house down. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that foundation is strong. Let's get 6 months of expenses in cash. That means you can withstand being out of work for 4, 5, 6 months. That means you can withstand being hurt for 3, 4, 5 months. You can withstand, a pandemic happening for a couple of months and shutting your business down. That happened to me, 4 months after I bought it. You can withstand these things, right?
Are you looking at business plus personal, or are you assuming personal is taken care of because you're getting paid a salary out of your business already?
I actually would look at those in, I would have 6 months of personal expenses in cash on the personal side and 6 months of business expenses on the business side. A couple of no-brainers for folks are, let's get a business checking account, assuming that you don't need to go and deposit cash very often or pull out cash very often. You can actually get a checking account, a business checking account that can pay you 2% interest. My favorites are Luminate and Blue Vine. keep like 1 to 2 months of expenses in there. The rest of it, so 4 to 5 months of expenses, keep in a high yield savings account. High yield savings account's a no-brainer. You're getting 4 to 5% right now on that. So your money's actually working for you while staying super, super liquid. You can access it. It takes like a day or two to get over to your checking account. On the business side, I'm a really big fan of Luminate there on the high yield savings side. On the personal side, I'm a fan of Ally or Marcus. I like Ally because it can, for business owners who are paying estimated quarterly taxes, for example, Ally has a couple buckets in there. So you can create a bucket that is just, hey, here are my quarterly payments. And you go and you put it in there, in that bucket, and then you pull it out of that bucket. And so you know you've got this money sitting in there specifically for this purpose.
So the bucket isn't a separate account. It's just you have the ability to put it. That's awesome. Because dude, I have like 5 accounts and I get dinged. I feel like I'm paying like almost $100 a month in the fees per account. And I'm like, what the? And all it is to put it in a different bucket, but it's like the fees just piss me off.
Fees are the worst. Yeah, and Ally unfortunately doesn't work for businesses. It's just a personal piece, but it is really, really nice. So I've had clients who come in with 7 different savings accounts, all at the same bank because they just want to track different things. And so we've actually gone and switched it so that now they just have 7 different buckets in their Ally account so that they can track it better. On the business side, I don't have a really good solution for that bucket other than like maybe keep a spreadsheet that you kind of have to manually track, which sucks, but there's no good option yet for that one. Those are the no-brainers. It's like, get a checking account, ideally one that pays some interest on it. Get a high yield savings account, both on the personal and the business side. It's a no-brainer. Your money's working for you and staying super liquid. Next step from there, and I'm assuming that at this point you already have a business checking account. I'm assuming you already have a business credit card. Next step from there is get a business line of credit. This can be the thing that helps you smooth out some of the ups and the downs of business. So let's say you want to pay yourself and you want to pay your team. Let's say you've got a team of 10 folks there and payroll is on Friday. You're going to maybe for whatever reason, your biggest hit of income is going to come in that Friday. But your money for payroll has to be ready to go either Wednesday night or Thursday. So there could be like a 1 to 2 day delay in there or gap in there. So rather than paying an extra fee of like $36, $25, whatever it is, overdraft fees, have this line of credit where you can pull that money, move it from this open line of credit into your business checking account, have it sit there for a couple of days. And then Friday, when that money comes in, you just go and you pay back that line of credit. You will have paid almost no interest on it. And to have that line of credit there costs like $150 a year, something super small.
Are you, for the line of credit, would you, the same bank that you're banking with? Or again, do you have some resources? Because obviously that's super helpful for who you recommend.
It's usually easiest to use whoever you bank with, because then it's an immediate transfer. If you have a line of credit at one bank and then a checking account at a different bank, could be like up to 4 business days to get there. And usually this is something that you want like quickly.
Yeah. And then do you find that traditionally banks don't have a draw like fee, or is that something that people need to be ready for? Because I have a line of credit and I get dinged a draw fee every time I use it, and it's a little bit of annoying, but it is what it is.
I would say if you get a draw fee, you should look at a different one. Unless you're getting a super low interest rate on it. So these are usually somewhere between like 10 right now, somewhere between like 10 and 15% interest rate on them. If you're getting like a 5% and you're getting a small fee every time you use it, could be better.
Gotcha. Okay.
Could be a better way to do it. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. I'm loving this. Keep going.
Okay. Those are a couple of the really, really, really basic things. Next step up, but still on the foundation, is what if you're a partnership So if you're a solo owner, you can leave this off to the side for a second. But if you're a partnership, do you have an operating agreement in place? What happens if one of you gets hurt? What happens if one of you passes away? I know I have to be the bearer of bad news all the time. What happens if you guys decide you don't like each other anymore? You need to have that set out in the operating agreement. And I know you had Matt Becker on, the attorney, to talk about this a little bit, but in the operating agreement, have that set out. But also, how are you going to fund that if that happens? So a quick story. A couple of my clients own a business together. They're physical therapists, but close enough in this case. Had a conversation with one of them. And I was like, hey, what would happen if your business partner passed away? And she was like, listen, I love my business partner's wife, but I in no way, shape, or form want to be in business with her. That would be the case, though. That unless you have a way to fund that your business partner spouse is going to be your new business partner. Easy way to fund that is having that conversation around like life insurance, disability insurance. And I know that doesn't sound fun. I know that everyone thinks that it's not going to happen to them. We're all human. It happens, unfortunately. 50% of business exits are due to, they're involuntary, due to death, disability, divorce, disagreement, whatever it might be. So that's a really, really important piece. It's not a fun one to think about. It goes in that important but not urgent quadrant.
Gym owners, wanted to take a quick moment to tell you all about IBC. All right, it stands for Implementation Bootcamp, and it is where learning and doing get merged into one live experience. All right, it's happening in Orlando, Florida on July 26th and 27th with myself and Matt Wilbur. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through the 5 domains of the client journey, and we're going to help you to capture and document SOPs and systems within those 5 areas. All right, so the 5 areas are marketing, lead nurture, sales, fulfillment, and then retention and ascension. We're going to help you leave with at least 3 systems documented in each category so that you now have a system documented that you can teach to others and have a repeatable and predictable process in place. So if that sounds like something you want to do, come out to IBC and we'll see you there. If you want to sign up, just go ahead and click the link in the show notes. See you at IBC, guys.
What about like non-performance? Because one of the things that I see in some, they have partnership or maybe it's a family member or whatever it may be, and there's oftentimes one of them decides that they want to keep making money, but they don't want to really be working in the business. So would that be something that would be of like making sure that that's included as well? Like non-performance or you're not fucking working anymore. So you don't have the same benefits.
Yeah, that should be mostly laid out in the operating agreement. And that would fall into that disagreement piece of involuntary dissolutions. And again, go have a conversation with an attorney about the operating agreement, but this is where that financial planner should be the quarterback, being involved in that. So when my clients are putting together operating agreements, I'm having them send them to me so that I can just like take a quick look at it. I'm not an attorney. I obviously don't understand all of the language that they use, but I know a couple of quick things that I want to look at to make sure that they are there.
Yeah, is there a certain type of attorney that would be ideal for that? Because obviously they're specialists in everything. And typically when you find a specialist that just does that, they might charge more per hour, but they're efficient and it's right the first time. So you recommend a certain type of attorney for that?
I mean, I'll put a plug in for Matt Becker here because I think he's great. And he works all across the country with just gym owners. But find an M&A, mergers and acquisitions attorney. If you want someone local, they'll be the person you really want to work with. And probably don't go with this is where a specialist can be more helpful. Don't go with, so I live in small town Vermont. I probably wouldn't just go down the street to that attorney that does divorce and M&A and real estate and like everything and estate planning, like everything under the sun. Probably not going to be a best bet. Go somewhere that either is big enough to have a team specifically for M&A or a smaller firm that really just does business and M&A types of attorney work.
Yeah, when they start from scratch, it gets real expensive.
It is. You usually don't get the best service.
No,
you don't really get the operating agreement you want.
They're figuring it out as they go, and they're billing you by the hour.
Yep.
Ask me how I know.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Well, Colin, I was going to ask you, because I think a lot of people learn from stories. If I know you can't share names and the name of the gym and the name of the client of yours and where they're located, but like maybe one or two cautionary stories, or just even a success story. You're like, they started working with you and this is what happened and how it changed their life. And then if, you got a cautionary tale where it's like, oh my God, I totally talked to this gym owner and they were doing this, and gym owners don't do that, right? But what are some stories that you encounter with real world gym owners that you can share?
I think most of the cautionary tales that come to mind are a little bit of the stuff we already talked about, where like they didn't keep their personal and their business expenses separate, or they worked with a CPA and they were like, yeah, save me every penny that you can this year. And then 5 years down the line, they had to go and sell a property to pay for the back taxes that they owed, or pay for the kind of the short-sightedness of that decision. And then selling that property means that they owe more taxes, and they have to go and figure out how to pay that piece off. That's like it's a treadmill again, where you're just like, I've got all these taxes that I have to pay. How do I do this? So those are more of the cautionary tales from my end. Is those smaller things. Get the small things right.
All right, I want to go back to zero to wealthy. So
go ahead.
So obviously we talked about business line of credit, making sure you have an operating agreement. If you have a partner, keep going.
Okay, so in terms of like that foundation, that's the piece. If you do have a partner, if you don't have a partner, what happens if you get hurt and can't work? Have that plan in place and figure out how to fund it as well. Because if that's your biggest income source, and then all of a sudden that income source disappears because you can no longer, and yeah, I'm not concerned about like someone breaking a collarbone, breaking a leg. Like people listening to this podcast are going to suck it up and get out there, right? Like I have a client who got into a snowmobile accident, broke elbow, knee, femur in 2 spots. 6 weeks later, yes, like with a walker and then eventually cane, but was still back on the job because she's just that type who's like, listen, I'm going to be out there working. I don't care. So that type of thing, yes, it happens. I'm less concerned about that. Have enough cash to handle that. Probably have an HSA in place for that as well, a health savings account. It's almost a no-brainer. Please go get one. But it's more like the what happens if you get cancer? What happens if you get a back injury and you can't sit down, stand up, you have to lay down? What happens if you have brain injury, that type of thing? That's the thing that scares me. And what's the plan for when that happens? Where's your income going to come from? And maybe if your gym is a hobby gym and your spouse makes a ton of money and you can just live on their income, awesome. That's fantastic. Great. If your gym, however, is your biggest income source or really big portion of your income source, there needs to be a plan in place for that.
So what does that look like? Is that getting, really high level disability insurance? Like what do you guys normally recommend?
You've got options. You could have personal disability insurance that would pay you. You could also have something that's called business overhead expense, where it pays the business to hire someone else to do your job. That way you can still take your draw, but you're paying for someone else to do your job. So you're still getting money coming in.
What can somebody expect to pay for that level of insurance?
Think like 2% of your salary. It is health dependent, of course. So it depends.
Okay. All right. So we got that taken care of. Now you got 6 months covered, we're starting to make money. We get to actually start doing some stuff with it. Where are we going?
Now it's the fun stuff, right? We're above the foundation. We're in the house, and we get to figure out like, what kind of furniture do we have? What's the color of the walls? Like all of those things. Most people, again, this is where the today versus tomorrow conversation comes in. Most people are like, hey, now I want to start saving money. And so I'm going to go deduct as much as I can from my taxes. A couple of things to think of. If you're going to go I don't know, buy a house, buy a property, you actually want to show more income for that. So that can be a really short-sighted decision.
With that, I don't know what your thoughts on this, but everyone values W-2 income. Is it better to show the W-2 income being higher or just the business in itself being profitable?
Depends. If you're new, W-2 is helpful. If you've got a longer history, I'm talking like 3+ years, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's 3+ years of pretty consistent or good income. And so what a lot of people will do is they'll just, maybe they'll open a 401k, maybe they'll open a simple IRA, a SEP IRA, which is like a self-employed person IRA, and they'll just pour a bunch of money into that because that reduces their taxable income. But what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for a big, big tax bill down the line. And so one of the things you want to do is make sure that you're kind of balancing today and tomorrow. Yes, well, we do want to use that 401k. Maybe we have a Roth option inside the 401k. And this is where setting up employee benefits can be really, really handy. If you're a large enough gym that you have enough employees, probably 10+ employees, that it makes sense to set up a 401k, then having that conversation about what that looks like and how to do that, you can actually have, like if you're doing really well and you just want to figure out how do I put the most into savings, awesome. Go get a 401k. That's going to be your best option. If, however, maybe you're only making a couple $100,000 a year take home, that might not be your best option. Maybe a simple IRA could be a really good option. It's got a lower amount that you can put in per year. It's about $15,000 as opposed to in a 401k, you can put in about $69,000. So it's a lower amount, but it's also a much lower fee to do so. And then there's a SEP, but you really only want to do a SEP if you are the only person who is benefit eligible at your company. Otherwise, whatever percentage of your salary you put in for yourself, you have to put that in for every employee who's benefit eligible. So if you put in 20% of your salary, you have to put in 20% of everyone else's salary as well.
So let's just say someone wants to, again, really only take care of themselves on the benefit side. So I don't get this part so well, is I'm only allowed to, like in the 401k, do the exact same percentage as my employees. So like the whole 68,000 thing I can't do. So like I don't know how it was set up, but basically I screwed myself in the face from that tax advantage so that my team could be taken care of. What are your thoughts on that? And then because I don't really get it. I'm like, because like everything you read online is like, hey, you can put X into a 401k, but me now as a business owner, because I decided to take care of my team, I can't actually take advantage of that because the percentage, because at one point I had 75 team members and they were putting in like, it averaged out to like 1% of their income being put in. So I was like, it's almost like I have no benefit here.
So I actually just saw this with a client as well. She's got 18 employees and like 3 of them are contributing to the 401k. So she ran into the same issue. She set it up with someone else before we started working together. And the 401k was set up poorly. This is where finding a really good TPA, third-party administrator, is really, really, really important. I've got one up here in Vermont who works all across the country, who I think is amazing. Sarah Voigt is her name, Voigt. I'll plug her. She's really, really good at what she does. And she can get in the weeds about like, you have to tweak this piece over here. You have to tweak that piece over here. And what those tweaks allow you to do is to then make the maximum contribution for yourself without having to worry about what percentage your employees put in.
Okay. So if somebody like was doing really well and they had the ability to put the whole 68,000 in, is that something that you would recommend or not recommend? Like, let's just say they have more money to be putting elsewhere, but they could max that out. Is that a smart move, even though, they're going to pay, say, 50% in taxes, 20, 30 years from now on that money? But what are your thoughts on that?
I will, of course, preface this by saying financial planning is a one size fits one and not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
It depends. So maybe
This is one size fits me right now. What we get?
maybe, Matt. I don't know what else you got going on. So think about, what do you expect what's your marginal tax rate right now? Meaning the next dollar that you make, how much are you paying on that in taxes? Compare that with what you think it's going to be 20, 30, 40 years down the line. There is a likelihood, it's not a guarantee, but a likelihood that in 2026, we're actually going to see tax rates increase. So for folks making $300,000 a year as a household income, probably going to go from about 24% tax rate on the federal side. This doesn't even include state or local, 24% up to 33%. That's 2 years from now. Do we think that that's going to go down 20 years later? I don't know anyone who thinks it does. It doesn't feel this way, but we're actually in a historically low tax rate environment. So if you save yourself, let's say that full $68,000 in taxes this year, and you've got 30 years until you can touch it, because you can't touch it until you're 59 and a half, or even 20 years until you can't touch it, it's probably going to have doubled, maybe 2 times in there. So all of a sudden you're looking at $250,000. You now owe, and maybe tax rates, instead of being 33% are now 40%. You now owe 40% of that $250,000 instead of just taking a little bit of a hit today on maybe 24% of that $68,000. That's a big difference. There are, again, financial planning is a one size fits one, not a one size fits all. So you want to really be thinking about that piece. And what other tax buckets do we have? So there is that tax deferred bucket where you don't pay any taxes today. So all the money you put in, plus all the money or all the growth on top of it, you pay ordinary income tax rates when that comes out. 401k is a great example of this. There's also the tax-free bucket. This is things like Roth IRAs, for example. This is actually where permanent insurance fits in and why it's a trick that the wealthy folks often use.
Well, what if you make too much money and you don't qualify for a Roth IRA?
That's actually where permanent insurance can be really, really helpful. But also if you have a 401k, you can probably set up a Roth bucket in there, a Roth option in there. And then you can contribute Roth dollars, at least a portion of it, into Roth dollars. That tax-free bucket, you're paying the taxes today. So like a Roth, for example, it's an easy one to think about. You pay the taxes today, but all the money you put in and all the growth on top of it. And if you've got time on your side, that growth is going to be much, much more than the money you put in. All of it comes out tax-free whenever you pull it out. Third bucket, and this is usually where a business fits in, and thinking about, again, with the end in mind, what's the goal of the business? Most people don't think about exit planning because we don't want to think about it. We enjoy being in the business. We really enjoy running that gym. But at the end of the day, either we're going to choose to get out of that gym or it's going to get chosen for us. Do you want to have control over that, what that looks like? Or do you want to be told what that looks like? I guess I'm a control freak. I always choose control. So in that case, if you sell the business, you want to think about how to make it saleable, which is an entirely different conversation. But how to make it saleable so that when you sell it, because you know that 15% of the value of it when you sell it is going to get taxed. This is also another now versus later conversation. Depreciation. If you depreciate your assets today because it feels good, you pay less in taxes, you're now paying 25% on that recapture in the future. Again, now versus later. And there's no one right answer. It could be the right answer to depreciate today and suck it up and pay 25% later. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. That taxable bucket. So when you sell that business, you're going to pay 15% on that business. So using your example, Matt, sell it for $1 million, $150,000 is gone because it goes to taxes. Another example in there is just like a simple investment account, not specifically for retirement. You're going to pay the same amount, that 15% on the growth piece inside of there. And all three of those buckets, I think of it like a triangle, simple mind, everything's a shape for me. All three of those buckets, you want to make sure that not necessarily that they're even, but that you don't have one of them well overweight compared to the others. So what I see from most gym owners is that everything's been poured into their business, which when you're newer to business, let's say the first 5 years or so, is exactly the way that you should be doing it. Pour everything in your business. From there, when it's doing well, that's when you start to diversify. You need to take the risk of having all your eggs in one basket at the beginning. But once that basket gets larger, you want to start to move some eggs to different baskets. And that's when you start to open up a simple IRA or a 401k. That's when you start to look into the Roth IRA or the permanent insurance, whatever it might be. All of those, having those buckets down the line be closer to even. My rule of thumb is like 40%. For gym owners, it's a little bit different depending on where you are and what your plan is. But rule of thumb to keep in mind is 40% in that tax deferred bucket and about 30% in the other two buckets. If you want to retire at 50, it's a different conversation. You need more in the taxable bucket because you can access that before 59 and a half. But as a rule of thumb, people can keep that one in mind.
Okay, let's just say we've been playing that game for a while. We're now 50, 60. This is a selfish question because I've never kind of got to that route of making the money last, right? So like, because we do have gym owners that are 50, 60-year-old that watch the listen in. So we've done a good job. We've built up several millions of dollars. Like what are the strategies to now make that money last?
So first thing, whether you're 50, 60, whether you're 20, doesn't matter. First thing is I really want people to treat savings like a bill. And I understand when you're first in the business, when you've just opened your gym and you're like scraping by, saving anything feels impossible. Totally understand that piece. Once you no longer feel like you can't possibly save 3 pennies and rub them together, I really want people to be saving between 15 and 25% of their gross monthly income, not your business's gross monthly income, but the amount you're paying yourself towards long-term savings goals. That's going to be the way to start to even out the triangle, the tax buckets. And they should go to different areas, of course. This is where, again, financial planning is one size fits one, not a one size fits all. Please go have a conversation with a financial planner. But that's the first thing to do. When you're in your 50s and 60s, I'd say it's a little bit of a late start to the game. Doesn't mean it's impossible.
I'm just saying, like, I'm 38, so let's just say I've done a good job for the last 20 years, and we've put them in the buckets. We've done a good job. How do we actually live off of that money and make sure that it lasts as long as we're on this earth?
Yeah. So what a lot of people, there are really 3 phases of wealth. First phase is the accumulation phase. This is the one that all of us spend so much time thinking about. It's how do we take our dollars today and grow them to bigger dollars tomorrow? Worry about rate of return, growth on our business, all of those things. That's what we're looking at. Most people get stuck in that mindset because we've been there for so long. We've just been consistently thinking about that. What we don't realize is that when you're no longer in business, when you do want to live on those dollars that you worked so hard to earn and to save, it actually takes a mindset shift. It's an entirely different goal. You no longer care about accumulating money or about what the rate of return is. Now you're in the distribution phase. This could start at 38. This could start at 68. It could start at 98, depending on each person. But once you start pulling that money that you worked so hard to save, I don't care what the rate of return is, frankly. All I care about is that you create the maximum income every month, every year, whatever it is. One really, really big caveat. I never, ever, ever want you to worry about running out of money. Meaning, this is kind of sound funny coming from a financial planner, but I don't just want you to take all your money, pour it into the stock market, and then say, hey, I'm good. I can just spend this the rest of my life. what I find is that when people do that, even when they have so much money, they feel like they can never spend it all. When people do that and the market dips, because the market's going to dip, on average, about every 5 to 7 years, it happens. And it lasts for about a year. We saw this a couple of years ago in 2022. People get so scared that they don't spend any money. Is that really what we want retirement to look like? I don't, personally. I want retirement to be like, spend the same amount every year, no matter what the market does, no matter what the economy.
My brother-in-law, I think so he did good for himself and he saved a lot of money. He has like 3 to 5 million of his own, and his dad passed away. He got another like 5 million. And he is scared to spend $1. And it's just like, dude, like, you're going to be all right. Like, it's okay. And he's just kind of like, it's just like he's got the scarcity mindset that it's all gonna to go away. And it's like, you probably couldn't if you tried, right? But keep going. I just want to give you like, there are people like that it's like, you got more than enough, but you don't want to spend, a single penny of it because you're scared.
I've got clients who are gym owners who own a business. They're bringing in good chunk of money, like they take home $450 a year and are perfectly fine with that, and maxing out their 401ks because it makes sense for them. And they're like 50-ish. They're probably going to have, let's call it 10 million by the time they retire in 10, 12 years. They have the exact same. It happens all the time where people are like, people will say that they don't care about leaving money to their kids. Like, that's not the most important thing. And usually it's not. That's okay. But then they'll act like it actually is the most important thing because they don't ever want to spend too much. I want people to be empowered to spend their money. You worked so freaking hard to get it. Like, owning a business is hard. That's why we got into it, though, for that financial freedom and that time freedom. It's not financial freedom if you're constantly worried about what the market does and whether you're going to run out of money. You're now a slave to this thing that you can't control. So whether you're 38, 58, doesn't matter. Set it up so that no matter what the market does, you can pull out the same amount every year. This means that you need to have assets that are not tied to the stock market. It's called a volatility buffer. There are a couple of different ways to do it. You can use, I call them protected equities. If you want to go look them up, they're called registered index linked annuities. Big words, why I call them protected equities, just makes more sense. You can use permanent insurance as this. If you want to go read some really nerdy articles, go look up a Wade Pfau, PFAU article. Forbes has one from a couple of years ago that was really good. That can be a really, really great strategy to take away the stress and the anxiety from finances later on down the line, and it doesn't hurt today.
So that's like your guaranteed income, right? No matter what's happening. Do you? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's sort of a guaranteed income, but it's also as the market drops, you want to have something else that you can pull from so the market can recover, and then you're not touching these depreciating assets. Because selling depreciating assets.
When are you switching from accumulation into those assets, or is that part of the strategy the entire time from the beginning?
Yeah, so as you switch into that distribution phase, I think of it as like climbing a mountain. Mount Everest, for example. The top of Mount Everest is, let's call it that switch from accumulation to distribution phase. If I asked you, like, what's the goal in climbing Mount Everest? I'm guessing you guys would say to get to the top. Most people say that. I would actually argue the goal isn't just to get to the top safely, but to also get down safely. And more people die on the way down Mount Everest than they do on the way up Mount Everest, because people are just planning about how to get up Everest. They aren't planning how to get down Everest. First, the people who retire to something are so much better off than the people who retire from something. So if you just sell your business and plan to go golfing for the rest of your life, something like 75% of business owners who sell their business regret it a year later. because they don't have a plan for what they want to do. Maybe you've got grandkids, you want to go take care of the grandkids. That's awesome. Statistically, you live 17% longer if you do that. If you don't have grandkids, don't care about taking care of the grandkids, that's fine too. But have something that you want to go do. Maybe so you want to go volunteer. Maybe the Phoenix program is around and you're really, really passionate about that. Maybe there's a kids program around that you're really, really passionate about. Whatever it is, go find that thing and go do that. Because if you retire to something, A, you're going to enjoy retirement a hell of a lot more. B, you're more likely to live longer, frankly. The other thing is plan how to take your money out. This is the switch from accumulation to distribution. Distribution is pulling that money out. What's the plan for it? It can't be the same plan as accumulating it. That's not going to go well. There are things you can do at 38, at 48, at 58 to set yourself up for that so that you don't have to scramble at the last minute and say, oh, I want to get this done. Because scrambling at the last minute is like, it's like the client who comes in and they're 100 pounds overweight and they're like, hey, I want to lose 50 pounds for this wedding that I have 3 months from now. Probably not going to work. But,
all right, so let's set some targets. So if somebody wants to retire with the ability to spend 6 figures a year, like what pretty much do they need? Like, what's the income target? Like, how much money will they need to accumulate to be able to do that safely, in your opinion?
I don't ever give people a nest egg target to reach for, because I think first, you can't tell what the market's going to do reaching up to that amount. You also can't tell what the market's going to do going down from that amount, whether that's the stock market, whether that's the market of the gym that you own, doesn't matter. You can't tell what the market's going to do. So I don't tell people to reach for a number. What I want you to reach for is have an idea. It's not going to be right, but have an idea of how much you want to spend every month. Is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? Is it 50,000? There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. Probably put into an inflation calculator. What happens if, like, how much is that going to be? Matt, in your case, maybe 20 years from now. It's probably going to have doubled, by the way, that cost. So if you thought it was $50,000 a month, now you need $100,000 a month. I want you to have that number in mind. And that number times 3 years, I want you to have buffer assets, whether it's the permanent insurance, whether it's that protected equity, whatever it is. I want you to have buffer assets that cover 3 of those years. Doesn't have to be today, but when you start retirement, I want that to cover 3 of those years, because then you can live on more. You can probably pull out an extra 50% every year. Not 50% of your total amount, but going from 4% to 6%. That's a 50% increase in lifestyle.
When do you need to start putting money into those buffer assets?
It's easier to do earlier, just like anything. The people who tell you to start a Roth IRA when you're 20 because it grows, it has forever to grow, are correct. Like compound interest is super, super helpful. It's especially helpful the later it gets. So when you think about, like, I happened to start a Roth when I was 20 because I was lucky. I had $100. I was like, here, let me put it in. The compound interest of that, I'm 36. The last 16 years hasn't been too much. But the compound interest of that from 36 to 66 is going to be crazy. So the longer that you can have something in there, easier it's going to be on your budget today and going forward. Doesn't mean it's impossible to do down the line. It just means that it's going to take more. Gotcha.
All right, I got one more question. So obviously people can just hire you, but what should people be looking for in a good financial advisor? Like, what are like the red flags of, like, run the other direction if this, like, coming up? And then, realistically from a fees perspective, like what's fair too. So like when we're looking at, I don't want people getting ripped off or getting set up with the wrong person. So like, what's fair in that realm? So like, what makes a good financial advisor? What's like the red flags? And then just kind of what to expect from a fees perspective when they're working with a financial advisor.
your financial advisor, financial planner is going to be someone who knows you're going to have some really vulnerable conversations with them. At least you better. So that's one thing that you should be having. It means you need to trust them. I would look for someone who is willing to be a little bit vulnerable with you as well. Like, here's how I actually make money. I would also look for someone who is not just an investment advisor. So your Morgan Stanleys of the world, your Raymond James of the world, your Edward Jones of the world, they're just going to talk about your investments because that's all they're incentivized to do. And that's okay. For some people, that's all they're looking for, and awesome. Like, go work with those folks. I don't think that you're going to get a holistic picture that way, though. I think you're going to miss out on a lot of different parts of the conversation. So I would look for someone who is willing to have those hard conversations with you. I tell people to listen to their gut. Like, have a conversation go talk to 3 different financial planners. If you want to talk with me, great. You don't have to. Go have a conversation with 3 different financial planners, and your gut will tell you which one is probably going to be better for you. If someone is just talking about your investments, though, run the other way. They're not going to have an idea of what your life as a gym owner is like. Ask them if they worked with someone like you, and ask for some specifics, not names and numbers, of course, but like, give me an idea of what you did with those people. Also, ask them about the term fiduciary and what that means, and dig in a little bit. For everyone's knowledge, fiduciary is a legal term. It means that someone is legally obligated to work in your best interests. In the financial planning world, it means that their recommendations and their decisions need to be in your best interest. Someone who is just an investment advisor, they oftentimes only have a limited fiduciary duty, meaning it's just about the dollars that they hold. So they could, for example, take you to tell all of your cash, tell you to take all of your cash, move it into investments, and they technically wouldn't be breaking their fiduciary duty because they don't have a fiduciary duty about your cash, about your debt, about your employee benefits, about your insurance, any of those things. Find someone who's fiduciary across the board, who will be talking to you about cash and will make those recommendations to you with that fiduciary duty in mind.
I think that's that alone is massive. The first time I ever heard that term was from Tony Robbins' books, but I've worked with people where they just have commission breath, right? Like everything else is bullshit and it sucks and you should never do it. And it's like, yeah, it's because you don't get a commission on it. That's so I also think a red flag is when people like crap on everything that isn't in line with the one thing that they get a commission on, right? Like, again, like you look at the government, you look at a lot of stuff, it's like, where's the money? And then ultimately the greed glands come out, and that drives the decisions that are being made. So like, I really respect people that are like, hey, I don't make any money off of this, but this is what you need to be doing, right? Because that's the right thing for you. And obviously that's under that term. But I think that's every person I've ever worked for that only does stuff in the interest of where they make money is not actually in your best interest in any capacity.
I agree. If someone tells you they're doing something for free, run the other way. That's a huge red flag. So like, someone could tell you, hey, go put all your money into an index universal life, an IUL policy. And because it's free advice, guess what? They've got commission breath, and they're going to get paid a ton of money to do so. Probably not in your best interest. Same thing with investing. Someone tells you, oh, just go invest in this thing. It's free for you. A, there's no such thing as free lunch. Everything has cost. B, run the other way. It's commission breath. I personally am a fan of financial planners who will actually charge a fee up front for their work because it's clear and it's very transparent about how they get paid.
So
generally,
are you talking about like, okay, we're going to charge you 10 grand a year plus percentage, or like what is?
Yep. It's the way I work. I'm biased, obviously, but I think this is the best way to do it, where charge a fee for all of the advice. For me, it's $3,000 to $10,000 annually, depending on complexity. And if there's no need to implement with that person. If you choose to implement with that person, investments, for example, there's always going to be an additional assets under management fee there. There always is. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You can't get a free invest. But you're going to get that investment fee no matter where you go. So as long as it's somewhere around 1% that they're charging for assets under management, you're okay. As long as you're getting good advice from it, of course.
All right. Well, Colin, I was just going to say, I think it's probably good to point people your direction, because especially that you have such niche, knowledge that you're helping so many gym owners. You stand head and shoulders above all the other financial planners and advisors that exist out there. So I just want to personally say thank you, because you gave us a lot of value. You gave a lot of nuggets to our listeners, to us. And so where could people find out about you and your services and just learn about what you do?
Sure. So you can go to Instagram. It's at Integrative Finance Guy. You can certainly email me. I don't know if we want to put that in the show notes, or I can say it here, but it's cpomer@financialguide.com. And then I'm affiliated with a company called Commonwealth Financial Group. Go look them up, Commonwealth Financial Group. There's a Commonwealth Financial Network. It's entirely different. Go look them up. Find me there.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. And I know you're going to probably get some reach outs from gym owners that need your help. So we appreciate you.
Glad to be on, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, do you need a sales rep to take care of all of your lead follow-up? Well, that is exactly what we do at Gym Reinforcements. We plug a sales rep into your business to do all of the inbound and outbound lead nurture. I'm talking text, emails, calls, social media DMs. If you or one of your team members is needing to do that every single day and it is draining, then it's time to hand it off to me and my team. So if you want to learn more, go to gymreinforcements.com and we'll be happy to grow your business.